Okay, let's just jump right in. The Beatles. I mean, they are still the best-selling music act of all time.
Billions of records sold worldwide. It's a staggering number, really.
It is. And for a group that was only actively together for what, 8 years?
Yeah, roughly. It just shows that they were so much more than just a pop band. They were a cultural earthquake.
Absolutely. So that's what we're going to unpack, how the Beatles really changed. Well, everything. We're talking music recording, fashion, celebrity.
And even the whole idea of what a musical album could be.
A huge story. And it all begins in post-war Liverpool in the late 1950s.
That's where John Lennon started a band called the Quarrymen, and they were playing what was popular then, skiffle.
Okay, let's pause on that for a second. Skiffle, what exactly is that?
It was sort of a British thing, a kind of DIY music. Think of it as American folk and jazz mixed with a bit of early rock and roll.
And the instruments were often homemade, right? Like washboards.
Exactly. Washboard, T-chest basses. It was super accessible, very energetic, a perfect starting point for them.
And this is when that core partnership forms. Lennon brings in Paul McCartney.
And then a bit later, George Harrison joins on lead guitar, even though he was a little younger.
They're all just teenagers, but they're driven.
They knew they had to get good and fast. But the place that really forged them, their true training ground, was Hamburg, Germany.
Ah, yes, the legend of the Beatles grind.
That's it. In Hamburg, they were playing these just unbelievably long sets.
8 hours a night, sometimes.
Sometimes 6 or even 7 nights a week. It was an absolute marathon.
And playing that long, they had to learn hundreds of songs, get their stage presence perfect. They must have come back to England as total pros.
They were miles ahead of the competition, and their sound was already evolving. They were soaking up American rock and roll.
Artists like Little Richard, Chuck Berry.
For sure. But they weren't just copying it. They were taking that energy and blending it with this unique pop feel. It was something totally new.
But all that raw talent still needs some direction, which brings us to Brian Epstein.
Right. He was a local record store owner, and he sees them playing at the Cavern Club in 1961.
And he immediately sees the potential, the charisma.
But he also sees the chaos, the leather jackets, smoking on stage, being a little rowdy.
He saw a huge opportunity, but knew their look had to change.
Totally. He was the one who insisted they ditch the leather for those smart matching suits.
And that one change basically defined their whole early image.
It made them professional. It made them palatable to a much wider audience. He packaged their rebellious energy in a way parents could accept.
And then he had to actually get them a record deal, which wasn't easy.
No, they got rejected quite a few times in London. It's hard to imagine now. But Epstein just kept pushing until he got an audition with George Martin at EMI.
And that's when the final piece of the puzzle falls into place.
Exactly. Ringo Starr replaces their old drummer right before they record their first hits. Epstein's business sense was just crucial to how fast they blew up.
Let's talk more about George Martin. He's often called the fifth Beatle. What did he bring to the table?
Oh, he was so much more than just a producer. Martin brought a level of musical sophistication that pop music just didn't have back then.
He had a classical music background, right?
Yes, and that gave him the language to suggest complex arrangements, harmonies, things the band might not have thought of on their own. He really helped refine their songs.
So he wasn't just recording them, he was collaborating. He even played piano on some of their early tracks.
Absolutely. And most importantly, he encouraged them to experiment. When they had a wild idea, like putting a sitar on a pop song,
Or a string quartet.
Martin knew how to make it happen, technically. He was the bridge between their creative ambition and the final polished record.
And all of this work just explodes into Beatlemania by 1963.
It was pure chaos. I mean, fans would scream so loud at the concerts that the band literally couldn't hear themselves play.
The music almost became secondary to just the event itself.
Police had to use barricades to protect them from these huge crowds of teenagers. It was a phenomenon.
And then in 1964, they go on the Ed Sullivan Show in America.
And that's it. The British invasion begins. Millions of people watched that performance, and overnight, the Beatles were the biggest thing in the world.
That level of fame must have been overwhelming. And yet, touring became this huge problem for them. Why stop when you're at the very top?
Well, a couple of reasons. First, just pure exhaustion. They were always flying, always trapped in hotels.
But the bigger issue was the sound, wasn't it?
It really was. They were playing in these massive sports stadiums.
Some were like 300 feet long.
And the sound systems in the 1960s were just not built for that. Their little amplifiers couldn't compete with 50,000 screaming fans.
So the music they were playing just got lost.
Completely. It frustrated them as musicians. They felt like they weren't even really performing anymore.
So because of the noise and the lack of privacy, they just stopped?
That's right. Their last paid concert was 1966 at Candlestick Park in San Francisco. And that decision completely changed their career.
Because now, instead of the stadium, they had the studio.
Abbey Road became their personal laboratory. They could finally focus 100% on experimenting with sound.
And this is where their real technical genius comes out.
For sure. You have to remember, they started with 4-track recorders.
Which sounds incredibly limiting. Today, you can have basically infinite tracks.
Right. Think of it like you're trying to paint, but you only have 4 layers of glass you can paint on. That's it.
So you have to be so creative with how you combine everything.
They became masters of it. They'd record, say, the drums and bass on one track, mix them down, and then use the free tracks for vocals, orchestras, effects.
And that's when they started doing really wild stuff, like backmasking.
Yeah, literally playing sounds backwards on the track. They used tape loops where they'd record a sound and just let it repeat over and over.
All these psychedelic sounds.
And they started bringing in all kinds of unusual things, too. Animal sounds, alarm clocks, anything. Their lyrics also got way more complex.
They were proving that a pop record could actually be a serious work of art.
Exactly. They became seen as serious artists, not just a teen pop group.
And this focus on the studio completely changed the music industry's idea of the album.
It did. Before the Beatles, the focus was all on the hit single. The album was often just that one hit song plus a bunch of filler.
Just something to sell?
Yeah. But the Beatles made the album the main event. They wanted every single song to be good, to be meaningful.
And they'd organize them around a theme, like on Teppers. They wanted you to listen to the whole thing from start to finish.
And the album cover became art, too. An iconic statement.
Their influence was just everywhere. I mean, look at fashion, the mop-top haircut.
Millions of guys copied it. And then later, they embraced all the colorful, psychedelic clothing of the late 60s. They were style leaders.
But they were also leading in other ways. They were some of the first big celebrities to talk openly about things like meditation and Eastern philosophy.
Right, which helped make those ideas popular in the West. Their whole attitude just came to represent the spirit of the 60s, questioning tradition, thinking for yourself.
And in 1968, they took that independent spirit and started their own business, Apple Corps.
The idea behind it was very utopian. It was going to be this multimedia company to help other artists free from the big corporate labels.
Sounds amazing on paper.
It did. It had a record label, a film division, even a clothing store. But
musicians, not business.
And that was the core problem. It was run more like an art project than a company. It led to huge financial problems and a lot of waste.
And that must have added a lot of stress to their relationships.
Oh, absolutely. The financial strain just made all the existing artistic tensions even worse. It was another big wedge driving them apart.
Let's go back to the engine of it all, though, the songwriting, the Lennon-McCartney partnership.
Such a fascinating dynamic. Even if one of them wrote most of a song, they'd usually share the credit.
Which created this kind of healthy competition, right?
Totally. They were constantly pushing each other to write something better, something more original.
And their styles were so different, but they just fit together perfectly. You had Paul's melodic, optimistic songs.
And then John's more cynical, personal, and abstract lyrics.
But we can't forget about George Harrison.
No way. He developed into an incredible songwriter in his own right. He wrote some of their most famous tracks.
And Ringo always got to sing at least one song per album.
That diversity is a huge part of why their music appealed to so many people.
But by the late 60s, those personal and artistic differences were just becoming too big.
The recording sessions for their last albums were famously tense, argumentative. Members started focusing more on their own solo projects.
But they still gave the world one last live performance.
The iconic concert on the roof of their Apple office in January 1969.
An amazing, impromptu goodbye.
Even though they didn't really know it was the end at that exact moment.
The official end came in 1970 when Paul McCartney announced he was leaving. That was massive news everywhere. The end of an era.
It really was. Though, of course, every single one of them went on to have a very successful solo career.
Their legacy is just monumental. The music is still everywhere, still being covered by new artists, still studied in universities.
They didn't just push boundaries, they completely redrew the map for popular culture.
So the Beatles didn't just make music, they really defined the 1960s. They reinvented how music is recorded and marketed, and they are, without a doubt, one of the most important creative groups in history.
A truly enduring legacy.
Think about this as you move forward. If the Beatles had access to today's noise-canceling technology and the powerful sound systems of modern stadiums, would they have continued touring after 1966? And how might that have completely changed the history of recorded studio music as we know it?